You are now tuned into season 2 of the Life is Tricky podcast with your host, Kels. You already know the vibes, where I bridge the gap between the discomfort and comfort of mental health by relating it to everyday discussions from a millennial perspective. So you already know, season 2, bigger, better, new guests, more conversations. Life is tricky, but Jesus took the wheel. What's up? This is the Life is Tricky podcast. I am your host, Kels, and today we have Be Emotionally Fit Hood Therapy. Introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, my name is Beverly. I'm a therapist, social worker, educator.
What's educator?
So I work full-time as a school social worker.
Okay.
I run my private practice, Be Emotionally Fit.
Right.
And then I also work at a clinic, South Shore Child Guidance Center in Freeport.
Okay. So we're gonna start off with a little icebreaker. Would you rather?
Okay.
You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Vacation or girls trip?
Oof.
Gotta think
I don't
about
wanna
it.
get in trouble. Vacation.
Smart answer. Would you rather become a billionaire by hard work or winning the lottery?
I don't care to be a billionaire in any way.
Oh, really?
Mm-mm.
Why is that?
I don't believe in extreme wealth. I think that anyone who's extremely wealthy, it brings certain, in order to get that wealth, you have to get it in a certain way,
Mm-hmm.
which I'm not for. So for you to have a certain level of money, you usually have to abuse other people under you to get that. So maybe you
Never
have
thought about it
workers
like
under
that.
you that are underpaid,
Mhm.
or maybe they're paid decent, but if you're making that much money,
Right.
they should be making more as well. So
Okay.
I don't believe in that.
I like that. I like that a lot. So we're just gonna get right into the questions. What made you go into social work, and because you're a counselor, correct?
Yeah.
So what made you go into that?
Man, I mean, it's weird because I'll answer that question differently every time it's asked,
Right.
but it really was something that developed over time. Though when I look back at it, I'm like, man, it was always within me.
Mm-hmm.
As far as being a field that's helping and caring for others, and needing to be empathetic.
Mm-hmm.
And I have terrible memory, so I don't remember certain things. But I remember I opened up an old letter from a friend in high school, and she was like, you're always so helpful. I could always come talk to you about my problems. And
Mm-hmm.
like I ran into an old coach, and she was like, I would always have you handle all the problems on the team and to talk to the girls. I was like, I do not remember that. Wow. But as far as how I got here, I originally wanted to go to college to be rich, actually, because we get taught early, like, you got to make money,
Yeah.
so that you can take care of the rest of the family. I mean, I'm sure you guys have heard this. It's all like very common in the Latino culture. And so I didn't really know what I want to do. I just knew I needed to make money.
Right.
I figured I'll do business. And I started college, and I did a business internship. And I started as a management and training program. But I saw there was this distance between me and the people in the, I guess, service positions.
Mm-hmm.
They were all Puerto Rican, Dominican, Salvadorian.
Right.
And the only people in like the office positions were all white. It was only me and another intern that were like not white. And I saw how little they were getting paid, and I just didn't like it. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
They were very proud of me, and they were like so excited there was somebody of color in the office space. But I was like, But that means I have to take advantage, like I was saying before, I have to take advantage of you guys not making that much money. I don't want to do business. So I did that for 3 years as an internship, but I winded up majoring in metropolitan studies, which is like NYU. They just like to be like fancy and different. It's just urban sociology.
Oh wow.
I did that, and through there you have to do internships with like nonprofit work.
Mm-hmm.
So I started doing worked at The Door, which is like
Oh, I heard of that.
okay,
I heard of it.
It's a huge agency in the city
Mm-hmm.
that's offered to like all youth in the boroughs, and it's like a multi-service agency. You can go there for your GED, art classes, poetry, housing. Like, they help with everything. and I loved it. And so I still didn't know what social work was though.
Right.
And I just said, I want to do nonprofit. I want to do nonprofit work. And I started working as a case manager with children with severe emotional disturbance and helping them get therapy, crisis intervention, like serious psychiatric diagnosis, so like bipolar, schizophrenia. And doing that work, my boss was a social worker. He's really the one that like, you know, all these little things led to there, but he pushed me and he was like, you're a social worker. You need to go to school to do social work. And I was like, no, I'm gonna own my own business. I'm gonna do nonprofit business stuff. And he was like, you can do that with social work. And so I didn't know what a social worker was. And, you know, I looked into it more and I was like, oh my God, this has so much flexibility and I can do so much with it, which I'm seeing now. I'm a school social worker. I work in a clinic as a therapist and now I'm running my private practice. So I winded up, you know, running my own business.
How do you juggle all three?
I don't know. It's not going to last much longer. I'm seeing the difference now in my late 30s and it's a lot harder to keep up. But I mean, I don't got no kids. I'm not married. So my job is like my kids.
Right.
But when you love what you do, it doesn't feel like work. Right?
Exactly.
So the school job really allows me to do other stuff though, because I get out at 2:30. We get mad vacations. And then therapy, a lot of people like therapy like in the evenings.
Right.
So it works out.
Okay. So how did you come up with Be Emotionally Fit?
Like come up with
the name is catchy, but how did it all come about?
Or just wanting to be like the business
all together.
Okay.
The name, the business.
Well, it's funny because like I like to write down like goals and stuff like that, and I'll just like on a note, and I have like a box filled with just like old notes, cards from people, and sometimes I'll come across things, and I've always said I wanted to run a business. I wanted to. Originally, I said I want to do something in the community, in my community, and I want to give back to my people. So I'm doing it. It looks a little different. I thought I wanted to do like a multi-service agency, which is still like Be Emotionally Fit isn't just a private practice. It's not just therapy. Like I'm trying to, you know, just like you, help to destigmatize mental health. And therapy is fun. At least like all my clients think so. All the kids love counseling. It's not what people think of, like, you know, people think, you know, I'm just sick or you're crying. We laugh, we cry. It's fun, and there's so many different ways to do therapy. So like we do walk and talk therapy. I've done like take people to the gym. I've done like sports with them. Right now, COVID kind of messed things up, but like a lot of play therapy with kids would work with adults. So
really.
Yeah, it's about like doing different activities that are fun will still incorporate like social emotional skills. So right, like you do a lot of like games with the kids and you're working on sportsmanship or managing your emotions. You're like frustrated with the game. Actually this happened with one of my clients. I was teaching her I'm also a softball coach.
Okay.
So I was teaching her how to bat, and she's an athlete, but she never played softball. So she was getting frustrated. It was cool to see her in that light, because in sessions talking, I don't see that frustration. So I got to see it there and help her manage it. And that's what you do a lot with like play therapy. I mean, there's so many different interventions you could. Sometimes people just in doing an activity feel more comfortable talking.
Right.
So I was doing escape rooms. And so it's very...
Those are challenging.
Therapeutic. People get upset. People have to do teamwork.
Yeah.
And so it's nice to like sit back and just observe how everybody is like interacting and stuff like that. And so I was doing escape rooms, but they all had to do with a certain topic. So like the first one that I did was on love languages. So, you know, you had to find certain clues, and each clue would teach you about a different love language. And if you were able to solve the puzzle, you help save the relationship.
Wow.
So creative ways that still get to bring up these topics related to mental health.
I don't know which way to go, because the love language is like, because I feel like a lot of people really don't know the difference. But because I'm more intrigued with kids, because I feel like that's how trauma starts. It starts at childhood, and then it just develops in adulthood. So how do you go about counseling children?
So my work started with kids, which I think prepared me better for adults. because a lot of the work with adults will go back to what they experienced as children.
Right.
And so in working with kids and seeing what they're going through and what they go through with their relationships with each other in school, with their parents, I'm able to bring that insight with my adult clients.
What's your method or technique to break a kid down? Because maybe from the outside looking in, I don't think it's that easy to get a kid to open up. So how would you go about that?
One is, I will say, I do think that there is a difference with this generation. So I've been in the field for a little over 10 years now, and I have seen a difference between, and it might be also that I'm working in Long Island now, and when I started, I was in the city. But when I started at the school district, which was, 8 years ago now, day one, I walked into the building and they were like, "You the social worker?" Oh my God, I got so much to tell you. And I was like, what? Usually is like, you take people's kids away, you know? And so I hadn't heard that comment in a long time. And when I first started in the field or was interested in it, I would hear that a lot. Like people only associated social work with
like ACS and CPS.
Yeah. And I want to say to everyone now, most CPS workers are not social workers. You can have a degree in anything related to psychology, so psychology, sociology, and be a CPS worker. So they are not social workers. Some of them may have a degree in social work, because not everybody is a social worker. They're ACS workers. There's a difference. So one, the population I'm with now, I find that they want to talk. They just need that space where they feel like they can trust you. And I mean, you hear this all the time, bringing that authenticity, and I do. And so when you bring that, the kids see you're real, they want to talk. Two, I mean, I'm already well known in the school, so it's like, go talk to Ms. Torres, and they'll bring people. Right. It's a familiar face. The community that I'm working with, I'm Salvadorian. Majority of the students are Salvadorian or Salvadorian and Black. I mean, when I first got there too, I mean, I grew up in Freeport. You're from Long Island too, right?
Yeah, I'm still.
Okay, so you know.
Right down the block.
When I first started working there, it was so strange to me because I'm like, my name is Beverly Torres. But the kids would be like, "Miss Torres, you have Black?" And no, what? My last name is Torres. Where are you getting that from?
Right.
And they're like, just the way like you carry yourself and the way you talk, like, we thought that you were half Black. And I'm like, no. And so I think me being from the community and living in like Freeport, Roosevelt, they're right next to each other.
Right.
So, I grew up in very similar ways. They can feel that. And then also just like modeling for them how to express yourself, saying it's okay, telling them how common it is. Like I'll get a kid, especially at the school I'm at, I get a lot of crisis, kids that are, thinking about hurting themselves, suicidal thoughts. They come in and I'm like, hey, this actually happens a lot. And it's true. Like there was one year I had like 32 referrals. And this is a small school and it's been growing. So back then when I had 32 referrals, I think we were like at 420 kids. And that's only the ones that I found out about. So I'm sure there's way more. But them knowing that this isn't strange, that you feel this way. This is something common. So like normalizing therapy and mental health, having these discussions helps people open up. And they just feel your energy, you can tell who wants to, like, who's genuine, who wants to help. And reassuring them that whatever we talk about is going to be private.
Right. Building trust. So you mentioned children being suicidal. I've been very vocal about my struggles with it. And in 2019, that's when I said, I'm going to live in my purpose and scratch out any suicidal thought that comes to mind. Because once you let the thought carry, it will continue. So being that it is Suicide Prevention Awareness Month, what advice would you give people that still struggle?
I do a lot of safety planning, like kids, adults. And what safety planning is really sitting and thinking about, okay, what are the things that trigger these thoughts? Where are these thoughts coming from? And what are other tools and strategies I could use other than hurting myself or taking my life? And so going over that, providing the crisis hotline, providing not only strategies, but like, who are the people in your life? And a lot of times I'll have people sit down and they're like, Nobody. I can't think of anybody. But every time I'm able to get them to find somebody. It's when you're in that really dark place, you think nobody loves you, nobody cares about
Yep.
you. But when I sit and I've already asked certain questions, like, hold up, you just told me your mom said this. I think she would care.
Mm-hmm.
Or like, you don't got no friends? I'm sure they would care. And they start to like write it down, or whether it's written or verbal, whatever. They start to identify certain people. And then even if it's day one that I just met them, like, now you got me too. You can add me to that list. If you can't call nobody, you can call me. And I've given them crisis hotlines, and people have used it and really found it helpful. And reminding them. I think the other thing is when the thoughts come back, sometimes people get really, really devastated. Like, oh my God, it's still happening. And so reminding them, like, hey, it's highly likely that it can happen again. And that's okay. You're going to get through it. And that's why we created this plan.
Right.
It doesn't mean there's something wrong. Just like I want you to remember how you felt right now. And after we spoke, you weren't suicidal anymore. Imagine if you would have acted out on that.
Right.
So if they come back, you got to remember that it's going to go away. Feelings come and go. Nobody's a happy 100% of the time. Nobody's oppressed 100% of the time. They come and go.
So for people who haven't dealt with the struggle of suicidal thoughts and attempts, and they feel like it's an act of selfishness, how would you break that stigma?
I think, one, educating. The big part is awareness and educating people. I think people don't realize how common it is. And when they start to hear that, I think that helps a lot. And just telling them, like, when someone's that low, like, you have no idea. You don't know what that feels like to be in such extreme pain. Like I to me, that makes me feel terrible to know that you're in so much pain that that's something that you're thinking. And usually when people are suicidal, they're thinking they're a burden. So it's not done because they're selfish. They're actually thinking, I'm a burden to my family and friends. This is going to make their lives better.
Yeah, that's key, because I think that's a big part of it. So let's talk about hood therapy.
Okay.
I want you to say the acronyms.
So HOOD stands for Helping Ourselves Overcome Discrimination.
And that's what drew me to you at the pop-up shop. Like, hood therapy, what is this about? And then when you broke it down, I was like, it's powerful just how be emotionally fit. Because for me, when I think of emotionally fit, I'm thinking of emotional intelligence. So how important is it for people in the hood to have access to therapy?
Extremely important. I mean, I'm a strong believer that most of us in therapy is because of a lot of our experiences in the hood, which, I would say, like, in the hood, you have a lack of resources, a lack of, it's not that we were born with these issues. When you grow up in a certain environment and you don't have, like, the best schools, you're in poverty, you have violence in your area, like, that's not your fault.
Right.
But dealing with all that can be traumatic. And to deal with that, sometimes people think of trauma as like a one-time thing that happened that you had a hard time with. But so I think some of the most, difficult trauma to work with people is something that's not going away. So like my undocumented students, like, maybe they're sad, depressed because they're separated from their family in their home country. That's not changing. They're not. Or if it is, it's not in anything that they can foresee right now that they're going to be documented. All of a sudden, problem solved. And so it's about, how do I still find happiness in this messed up situation, in this messed up world?
So what about people that live in the hood who have so many great ideas, but they don't have the resources? How would you, or rather, what advice would you give them to keep going? Because eventually they may just bump into the right person or get a job or something and finally be able to fund the resources that they need.
Well, I mean, one, I want to acknowledge all the people in the hood doing their things, because I think, and that's one of the parts of hood therapy was to be able to highlight people that are giving back to their own communities, because the way that we survive is because we are doing things.
Yeah.
Like, to survive in certain areas, you must be doing something, right? And so I do think that, you know, living in struggle makes you more creative. And builds more community, because you have to. You can't do it on your own. You have to connect with others to, you know, overcome the kind of things that you might experience in these areas. I mean, you're an example. You're doing this. Like, you've battled and lived with bipolar disorder, and look at where we are right now. Like, this is super fly. Like, seriously, was not expecting this, and this is really awesome. And so you're sharing your story, and this is all going to help people. And how do we talk more about these issues? So I do think that a lot of us are doing it. I think that a lot of us are doing it and don't realize what we're doing.
Yeah, definitely.
We don't realize that we are already successful in our lives and doing amazing things for the community or for our family and friends. But as far as like advice for people who are there, I think the biggest thing is community. I know I always attribute anything I've done to family, friends, random people that I connect with and met maybe one time and hooked it up with a resource. And that's one of the things that also drew me to social work. Is a big part of social work is community resources. So being aware of the resources and being able to connect people, because you can have all the will in the world, but if you don't have the tools to get to where you're going, it's not gonna happen.
So how do you determine what resource is a best fit for somebody?
Okay, I'm trying to think of like an example. I mean, it depends. I guess I would need more detailed situation.
Let's say you have a client that wants to start a business, but they don't know exactly how to start. So you think, oh, I know somebody that who can mentor you.
Yeah.
How would you determine who's best to mentor that client?
Okay. So, actually, I just had a situation like that today. They weren't looking for mentorship, but they were just talking about, you know, the struggles of starting their business. They're just starting. And I was like, ooh. And I think a big part of it is I get, in my work, I get to meet so many people. Big part is resources constantly. And I think after doing it for so long, it just kind of comes naturally. And you're like, ooh, I know this resource.
Right.
I was like, oh, I know this women entrepreneur group I think you might love, and mention it. But sometimes I mention resources and they're like, I'm like, okay. And then I'll throw something else at them. But I am really big on like local initiatives, you know, working with people from your own background. So that particular person I wanted to refer because this was like a woman entrepreneur company that serves women of color. So I was like, ooh, that might be good for you. Just kind of taking into account their age, their cultural background, their language, their access to transportation, maybe their access to income. Like there's this Cool's Couples workshop, and I haven't promoted it to all my clients because I know some of them, they're like they don't have the money to pay. So I need to find a resource for them that's free.
What makes you excited about therapy?
It's funny because when I started in social work, I remember a lot of people in school were talking about wanting to open a private practice. It used to piss me off. And I'd be like, that's not social work. Like, social work is like social justice. You gotta work for the community and advocate, and you know, which I'm still doing. But working in the school, doing a lot of counseling, I winded up meeting, they had therapists in the building from South Shore. I was like, oh, this is cool. Maybe I could do it on the side. And I started really loving the work. And just to be able to provide a space for people, and so many times, they just have never been able to have a space to talk about their feelings. And to see that is such a beautiful thing. And then myself, I've experienced therapy. I'm in therapy right now. And I mean, I just love it. I just love understanding myself, understanding others. And I find most people like it too. When we talk, they also feel good about understanding themselves.
When you feel like you and a client are outgrowing each other, is it difficult?
So I can't say I've ever felt that until recently, because I work with kids. Some of my kids, I've had them since they were 7 and now they're 13. So I've really seen them develop. And my boss stay getting on me. This is at the clinic, and she's like, Beverly, you've had this client for 6 years. I'm like, they still got stuff they want to work on. Why you want to close the case? Like, they're not in crisis, so they have this waiting list of people in crisis.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like, but they still want to come. Like, I don't want to close. I have so many people come to me at my private that they're like, oh, I got closed out because they said I don't need help no more. You got stuff you want to work on? All right, so let's work together. You know.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say I was starting to feel it now, and now I'm not sure if it was that we outgrew each other, or if it was COVID, because actually just happened today. I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm being effective anymore in my work with them, but this teletherapy thing made things really difficult. Not with adults, easy. Video, feels the same. But with the kids, because I use so much like play therapy. I mean, we were doing online games and other little cool things, but you have to really, there's so many different interventions. Whatever you use, you have to be passionate about it, or else they're not gonna like it. Right. And so I'm just sick of it. And I'm like, I don't want to do video with kids no more. Like, some of my kids I can, but there's a couple that I'm like, I need to see them in person. So I was doing home visits and stuff, but I can't do home visits every week with you. And so I just found that I was like, I don't feel like I'm helping them at this point. But I got them to come in today, and it went really well, and like opened up, talked about stuff, worked on some things. And I was like, okay, all right, this is still, and this with this family, and then there was another person as well that I had that I was like, I don't know if I'm being as effective, and I realized the teletherapy for some clients just wasn't working for me. And I need them to come in person.
It's like Zoom school.
Yeah. But I can see that happening. And one thing I worry about, I never want my clients to think that it's them, you know, and that, you know, sometimes you just need a change. But I hope, I always try to, okay, how are you feeling about things? And you got to be honest about, like, did I mess up? Are you feeling it still? And so I try to, that's why I'm like, I don't know if I felt that yet, because I'm constantly, I have messed up. And I'm like, oh my God, I am so sorry. And we repair the relationship and we keep it moving. And so when I think about like outgrowing, I'm like, then that's me not growing. It's not that we outgrew, it's me not challenging myself to do the work, to go look at what other interventions, what else do I need to know to help this person.
What does challenging yourself look like?
Challenging myself in what's just in general?
Yeah, in general. Or you could relate it to your career.
You know, we have these instinctual feelings that we get when we experience things, and constantly like pausing, like, all right, where's that coming from?
Yeah.
Is your perception of this like real? Because I am very opinionated, and I don't think I will describe myself like that anymore. Maybe when I was younger, I was stubborn, but my instinct is to be like, I'm right. I might, but I quickly am able to like check myself and be like, okay, what else is going on here? So that's how I challenge myself.
Okay. This is the last segment. Call it Kel's questions. What do successful therapists possess? Like, what characteristics?
Empathy, non-judgmental. And you know, it's funny because people will be like, nah, you be judging. Or even like within therapy, like, we are human, we judge. But I have to say, for the most part, I want to say like 99.9% of the time, when I have my therapist hat on, I really don't. Not personally. Of course I judge. But I love all my clients, and I'm there to seek and understand them. And so that judgment, it just can't happen. But again, we slip up, we human, but knowing that you have to check yourself if you're doing that. The ability to be super self-aware of how you're presenting, because making mistakes as a therapist can be really damaging for people. So, so I would say those things.
Okay. And the last one, what are key attributes that people should look for when seeking therapy? Because personally, I feel like people are like, oh, I'm gonna go to therapy, and they get the first one and just like, wait, no, all right, maybe this isn't for me.
That happened to me the first time I went. I was in social work school, and I was like, if I'm gonna do this, I need to experience it myself. And so I signed up for like counseling at the center that was at the school. And one thing is you need to come in with something you want to work on.
Right,
and I was just doing it just to do it. And I wasn't really sure. I was like, I don't know what I want to work on. I was like, I guess I got daddy issues. Let's talk about that. And then, I don't know. I felt judged by her. And I felt, and I also felt like she was just pathologizing everything and just kind of using too much like psychological terminology for me. And I was like, no, not for me. And even though this technically isn't like, we were therapists in training. In class, we had to give therapy to each other for a project, and that went really well. And that was like a positive experience for me. But I will say you should feel comfortable. You should feel comfortable with your therapist. I find most people that come to speak with me, day one, they're like, okay, I feel comfortable with you. Like, even if you don't feel comfortable, I would give the therapist like 2 or 3 sessions before like giving up, which I did. I gave that lady like 2 or 3, and I was like, all right, I'm done. I don't like this. I'll say even myself as a therapist, when I was looking for this therapist, I've had her now for a little over a year. I was just looking, I was like, Black or Latino. That's what I wanted in a social worker.
Right.
Though I don't want to, like, I know plenty of amazing art therapists, licensed mental health clinicians, family marriage counselors that are amazing therapists. But I'm very passionate about being a social worker, so I wanted another social worker. I didn't even read her whole profile. I read like 2 sentences. I was like, hi, I'm gonna call her. And it ended up working out. So I was lucky in that way. Read their profiles, get a vibe of them. Look at a lot of people have social media now, but they should look for somebody they feel comfortable with.
There you have it. Comfortability. Well, I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for coming. I really appreciate it. This is definitely top 5 favorite. Definitely.
Thank you.
So, this is the Life is Tricky podcast. I am your host, Kels, with
Beverly from Be Emotionally Fit.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode on the Life is Tricky podcast. I love you for listening. Tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend to join the conversation. Be sure to follow on IG at the Life is Tricky podcast and to subscribe on all major platforms as well as YouTube at the Life is Tricky podcast. We out.